Now that I've beaten the main story of Tears of the Kingdom, I want to ramble a little bit, my thoughts about the game overall, the story, things I wish they would have done differently, perhaps even future content that I'd like to see included for Tears of the Kingdom via DLC, because I believe Nintendo does have plans for DLC, just like they did with Breath of the Wild. By the way, this will be spoiler heavy, which means I'm going to talk spoilers of not only Tears of the Kingdom, but also Breath of the Wild. So if you haven't played either of these games, I suggest you proceed with caution unless you are okay with being spoiled regarding the main stories of Tears of the Kingdom as well as Breath of the Wild. But if you are also waiting to play one or both games and you don't want to be spoiled, well, you may want to come back after you've done beating both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom to hear my spoiler-filled thoughts regarding the game. So mostly we're going to talk about Tears of the Kingdom, but I may, throw in some Breath of the Wild thoughts as well. So the game takes place, once again, about 5 years after Breath of the Wild. I did do 2 other thought videos, one regarding the reaction to the gameplay trailer, and then a mid-game / beginner's guide thoughts video. So I guess this will be the 3rd installment of my Zelda Tears of the Kingdom thoughts trilogy. And if you want to go back and watch the other videos, feel free to do so. But it's already established that this game is at least 5 years after the events of Breath of the Wild. Link and Zelda, they encounter Mummy Ganondorf beneath Hyrule Castle, like deep beneath Hyrule Castle. Link gets badly injured. The Master Sword gets almost destroyed. Zelda grabs one of the secret stones and gets sent back in time. And she is in the early ages of Hyrule under King Rauru, which is a Zonai, along with his Hylian bride, the Queen Sonia. And they both have secret stones. His older sister, Minora, she also has a secret stone. And they're establishing the Hyrule Kingdom. But in the Gerudo Desert, you have Ganondorf, who is trying to take over Hyrule. And so there's a war, I guess, happening already around the time Zelda arrives in the past. Now, similar to Ocarina of Time, Ganondorf fakes fealty to the king. And he only does it because he knows that brute force is not going to be enough to defeat King Rauru and Queen Sonia and take over Hyrule. So he fakes loyalty, despite the fact that Zelda, who is a history buff, is aware of a demon king and has bad feelings about Ganondorf. I mean, years earlier, she dealt with Calamity Ganon. Well, I guess it was like 100 years prior to the events of Breath of the Wild. She was trapped with Calamity Ganon for 100 years trying to contain him. So she was aware of the name Ganon and the fact that this chief from the Gerudo, his name happens to be Ganondorf. That raises some alarm bells for her. And Ganondorf does end up ultimately killing Queen Sonia despite Zelda's best efforts to try and stop Ganondorf. Ganondorf takes Queen Sonia's secret stone and he becomes the Demon King. And ultimately it comes down to Rauru sacrificing himself in a battle with him, the sages, because there's different sages. Zelda's like the sage of light or time or both. And you have the sage of wind, sage of water, sage of fire, sage of lightning, which are the different species. There's a Gerudo, that's the sage of lightning. And you also have a Goron, who's the sage of fire. A Rito, that's the sage of wind. And then a Zora, that is the sage of water. They remain masked. And along with Zelda, Rauru is able to imprison Ganondorf for, I think, 10,000 years until the events of present-day Tears of the Kingdom. So Rauru is dead, and Minora is dying because she was one of the sages as well. She's the spirit sage. And before she dies, I think she takes her spirit into the Pure Pad, which Zelda took back in time with her. And Zelda ends up taking her secret stone, swallowing it, and becoming a light dragon in order to heal the Master Sword, which has also come back through time after the events of the Imprisoning War. And now it's her only chance to not only stop Ganondorf in the future and help Link, but also end up getting back to present day. So she becomes an immortal dragon, at the same time healing the Master Sword. This is something I figured out early on in the game, because you have the different icons around the map that are called the tiers of the dragons, which each have different cutscenes, and they're not in any particular order, except for like the main story one that you encounter with Impa. That one, I guess you're meant to find first. It didn't work out so well with me, because what I would do is I would leave the main story quest for my streams, and in between episodes throughout the week, I would jump in and do the side questing, the shrines, looting from the Sky Islands to the depths, and the shrines and all that stuff, including the Tears of the Dragon. So the name itself is kind of a giveaway, and you watch some of the cutscenes of those tiers, and the fact that they even mention early on about how it's taboo to swallow one of the, I guess, secret stones, which looks like a tear, by the way. It'll turn you into a dragon. So right there, I'm like, okay, the light dragon obviously wasn't in Breath of the Wild. The other dragons were. So it started clicking upstairs like, yeah, the light dragon might be Zelda. And then whenever I finally managed to get on top of the light dragon, I found the Master Sword early on. And fortunately, I had enough stam to pull the Master Sword. And then, of course, initiated another cutscene with Zelda. So I got the Master Sword at least at the halfway point, maybe prior to the halfway point for me. And it was just out of curiosity. And like, my curiosity gets the better of me. And I see this dragon flying by. I see what appears to be something on top of the dragon. I'm like, what's going on with this dragon? And I just feel the need to build something, a glider or a hover bike, in order to get on top of the dragons. And yeah, so I got the Master Sword early, and I quickly deduced that Zelda and the Light Dragon were one and the same. So ultimately, fast forward, Link gets the Master Sword, and he defeats all these bosses. He has new sages rally to his side, characters that he interacted with in Breath of the Wild, and together they go deep into Hyrule Castle and ultimately defeat Ganondorf. And Ganondorf is resurrecting, and he's been using a fake puppet Zelda to go around causing havoc, but that's exposed. He tries to, I guess, early on trap Link at the sanctum of Hyrule Castle, but it backfires. Link is able to defeat the Phantom Ganons, which is easy to do, especially if you already have the Master Sword, like I had. And then near the end of the game, Link manages to defeat Ganondorf multiple times, when he's back in his rehydrated form. And then whenever he becomes Demon King. And then whenever he decides to become a dragon as well. That was a pretty easy fight, to be honest. And there's another YouTube channel I'd like to mention, Garl-matic. I came across one of his videos, and he was talking about how he thought that the fight between the Light Dragon and the Demon Dragon at the end should have been worked a little bit differently. His idea for like a health bar for the Light Dragon, Zelda, which would gradually go down over time, which would imply that you only have a certain amount of time to defeat the Demon Dragon, aka Ganondorf. Why don't they call it like Dragon Ganon? I don't know why it wasn't called Dragon Ganon. I think Dragon Ganon would have made more sense. But, I mean, Demon Dragon does sound cool, but it would just tie into this whole Ganon thing. Like Blight Ganon, Calamity Ganon, Dragon Ganon. I think that's the name they should have gone with, but that's just my opinion about it. But, yeah, I'll link the dude's channel below in the description section of his video. So, I do agree. I think that they should have made the final fight between Link, Light Dragon, Zelda, and Demon Dragon, aka Ganondorf, a little bit more challenging, because it's not. It's actually pretty easy. It's a really epic, badass fight, because Ganon, tries to become a Demon Dragon, and he's gonna just destroy Hyrule and do everything he can to destroy Link as well, because he's underestimated Link this whole time. But Link has managed to survive the fight and kick Ganondorf's ass. And Light Dragon shows up to help Link in the final battle. And like I said, it's really epic. You have two dragons in the sky going at it with Link's help. he ultimately defeats the demon dragon, aka Ganondorf. I just wish the other dragons would have showed up. That would have been awesome as well. Even if they had like little cameos where each one did something to help you in the fight against the demon dragon, showing that they actually do give a shit and they, are more than just flying around being dragons, and they actually see the demon dragon as a legitimate threat. So maybe they show up like in different, like at the beginning of the fight, one of them shows up, then the other one, then the third one shows up, and they each help like fuck up the demon dragon, Ganon dragon. That would have been cool. But overall, I thought the story was all right. I mean, they managed to restore Zelda because after the fight, you have the ghost of Rauru and Queen Sonia. They help Link restore Zelda. They end up falling to the sky. Link catches her. They fall in a pool of water. And Zelda is grateful to be back in present-day Hyrule. And obviously, she doesn't really remember being a light dragon. But she's grateful to Link for, not letting her down. She doesn't really say that because she has absolute faith in Link from the very beginning of the game, and whenever she's sent back in time to the end of the game, she has 100% faith in him and his abilities as her swordsman and the one destined to wield the Master Sword and to seal the darkness. So Link doesn't let her down. Link's a Chad. He's badass. Maybe a man of few words, but a man of action. Overall, I really did like the story of Tears of the Kingdom, and the fact that you had all these individuals from across Hyrule uniting together as sages under Link. Along with Purah, we got to mention Purah. Like, a lot of people are simping over her. Definitely an upgrade for Purah from Breath of the Wild. Well, she is a Sheikah scientist, and she appeared as a child in Hateno Village at the lab in Breath of the Wild, but she was not a child. It's just a science experiment that went wrong and turned her into a child sometime before Breath of the Wild, but in between the events of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, she was able to revert back into a full-grown adult woman. And, of course, a lot of people were quite happy with the results. So, in Zelda's absence, you have Purah become the de facto leader of at least Lookout Landing and perhaps even Hyrule itself. So maybe she's like the chancellor or prime minister of Hyrule. She runs the government, and the royalty, the monarchy, is under Zelda. Okay, so let's talk about a few questions I have regarding, I guess, the story in Tears of the Kingdom. A lot of it revolves around Link, because for the most part, I'm not happy with the way Nintendo chose to cherry pick people's memories. Some people remember Link, and then some people have no memory of Link and have no idea who he is. And it appears as if it's the first time any of them have encountered Link. Not all characters. The main characters, I think, it's established that they know Link. They're familiar with him from Breath of the Wild. But like all the secondary characters, it's like they have no idea who Link is. I mean, case in point, let's talk about Latino Village. So in Breath of the Wild, Link can buy a house in Latino Village. He can have it fully upgraded. Therefore, it should be established that Link is familiar to the townsfolk of Latino Village. And I think maybe like one or two people, like the weird-looking Dai guy, I think he actually remembers Link from Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom. But it's like most of the village has amnesia, or they act like they don't even know Link. Like, for example, the mayor's wife. I think she's also like Zelda's maid. She comes over to help, I guess, clean up Zelda's house. And that's another issue because, fun fact, Zelda's house was originally Link's house. So that is in itself another question. Does Link give the house to Zelda after the events of Breath of the Wild? Do they start dating, and then does Zelda just move on in and they're having this relationship, but they're just kind of keeping it on the DL? In public, Link is just her bodyguard, her trusting swordsman, but behind closed doors, they're more. But the problem there is, even if it was established that publicly he was just her swordsman, her loyal bodyguard, then you think that the village would be aware of Link, especially somebody like the mayor's wife, who goes over there cleaning all the time, and the kids, who apparently go over there to visit Zelda. You think they would all be aware of Link. Like, hey, Master Link, or hey, Sir Link, where's Zelda? Have you seen Zelda? Now, some characters do know about Link and Zelda, are aware of Link's existence in Hyrule, but it's like in some parts of Hyrule, it's like they have no idea who Link is, even though he's the one who traveled around Hyrule like 5+ years later, and help rally people to fight Calamity Ganon and save Zelda. Well, Zelda also did her part to save Link, so they help each other. It's a great duo. I like that idea, that I guess the dyad between Zelda and Link versus the darkness, whether it's Calamity Ganon or Ganondorf, the Demon King. So that begs the question, okay, what exactly happened here? Is some of this canonical or non-canonical? Did Link never actually buy the house, and the Hateno village ended up giving the house to Zelda? And I know there's photos that are inside Zelda's house, and you can get like this cool looking photo from the Champions Ballads DLC of Breath of the Wild. So there are some things that connect from, especially if you're using the same save file or account, from Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom. Like, for example, the horses. If you had horses in your stable in Breath of the Wild, they carry over the Tears of the Kingdom. But other things don't, like your drip and your rupees and other things in your inventory, that magically disappears for reasons. But it would be cool if the house actually had more to do with Link and Zelda, right? But for the most part, it doesn't, unless you manage to get that Champions Ballad photo from the DLC in Breath of the Wild, and it carries over to the same account on Tears of the Kingdom, which is a good reason for me to probably go back and actually play Champions Ballad, try and beat it and maybe get that sweet photo for Zelda Link's house in Tears of the Kingdom. So that's definitely a question that I have. Now let's talk about the Master Sword. So it's very interesting with the Master Sword. Link, pulls it out of the Lost Woods in Breath of the Wild to fight Calamity Ganon. But sometime after the fight with Calamity Ganon, Link and Zelda decide to put it back in the woods. And then prior to the events of them going down into the depths of Hyrule Castle because of the gloom, like making people sick, they're trying to find the source of it. They go back to the Lost Woods and they get the sword back. It's not really explained why Link had to take the Master Sword back to the Lost Woods. Maybe it was the fight with Calamity Ganon that weakened the sword to the point where after Breath of the Wild, the sword just needed some time to heal. And so that also begs the question, and a lot of this does revolve around Link, like what exactly was Link doing this whole time? Because we come across Hyrule and NPCs and characters that are telling us all these awesome things that Zelda has been up to since Breath of the Wild, all these things she's been helping with. But what exactly was Link doing? Was he always by her side? I would have to believe he has been by her side, because he's her faithful swordsman. He was sworn by her father to protect her even 100 plus years prior to the events of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. And it's obvious they developed a deep friendship, and perhaps even more. I mean, the voice actress, well, the American voice actress or English voice actress for Zelda has implied that they are in a relationship. But that, I think, is just her opinion. Nintendo has chosen just to be kind of like hands-off as to whether or not there's more than just a friendship there. I think they do it because they still want to promote it as a kid's game, or maybe they just like people debating about whether or not Link and Zelda are more than just a princess and a swordsman. And this is another reason why this whole idea of some characters not remembering Link, especially characters in the Hateno village where Zelda ends up living and helping to build a school, they would know Link. Everybody in Hyrule would know of Link, the swordsman. And yeah, there are a few people that talk about Link here and there. But what else would Link be doing for the past 5 years besides being at the side of Zelda? What else would he be doing? Of course he would be by her side. Even if it wasn't romantic, even if it was just him keeping his vow to her father to remain her loyal protector and swordsman. Even without the Master Sword, as it recharges in the Lost Woods, he could grab any other sword, like a Royal Guard sword, for the time being, and still be able to protect her. He proves more than capable in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom without the Master Sword of kicking ass and taking names. In other words, I just can't see Zelda doing anything without Link being right there by her side ever since the ending of Breath of the Wild, all the way up to the beginning of Tears of the Kingdom. So he had to be there, whether it's romantic or not romantic. But I still am of the opinion that it was romantic between Zelda and Link, even if they chose to keep it on the DL. Something else that just disappears in between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, for the most part, is all the Sheikah tech, the towers, shrines, the guardians, thankfully. The Sheikah Slate, I guess Purah upgrades the Sheikah Slate, or the Sheikah Slate broke, and maybe Purah built a Nintendo Switch version with the backwards technology of the Sheikah Slate in order to create the Purah pad. The Divine Beast, we do have the Divine Beast masks you can acquire in the game. But for the most part, it feels like a lot of stuff that happened in Breath of the Wild isn't exactly alluded to. Whereas in Breath of the Wild, it was all about the Sheikah stuff, the towers, which are gone. I guess they went back under the ground, but you go down to the depths, and I never see any of those Sheikah towers. The shrines are gone. Some of them just disappear, and I think some of them actually are where chasms can be found, but not all of them. And when it comes to the Divine Beasts, what happened to them? And like the Guardians, I kind of get that. The moment the Guardians shut down, that would probably be like a top priority. And I know there's other people who made videos about this particular topic. I can understand like Zelda, Link, and all the others wanting to bomb rush the disabled Guardians and tear them apart, and maybe even use the parts for other technology like the new Sky Towers. So that's probably a thing. They probably just repurposed a lot of the technology from the older towers and shrines. Well, the shrines, I don't know. I don't really feel like the shrines would have been repurposed. But at the very least, the Guardians, you don't want any of them still around because they were quite deadly. But the Divine Beasts, I mean, they ended up on your side at the end after you restored them. So you think that the different factions like the Rito, the Gerudo, the Gorons, the Zora would still covet the Divine Beasts, and even if they were no longer like operational and they were just like stationary giant statues, you think that over a 5-year period the Divine Beasts would still be around even if they could no longer operate. But no, they're gone. Oh, and there's one more missed opportunity I feel like they could have done in Tears of the Kingdom regarding Lookout Landing prior to Link going down into the depths to fight Ganondorf. Why wasn't there like this epic like battle at Lookout Landing? That would have been amazing if like right before like Link is setting off with the sages to go down there. And this would be an optional mission depending on how you played the game, because you have the ability to actually go down into the depths like at the very beginning of the game once you get down from the Sky Islands if you want to. Just like in Breath of the Wild where you could go straight for Calamity Ganon after you got off the plateau. But let's just say you played the way it was intended. You go and get the 5 sages, you have the Master Sword, the Hylian Shield, and then you're setting up to destroy Ganondorf. But before you can destroy Ganondorf, Ganondorf sends basically a few waves of enemies to attack Lookout Landing. And very similar to the Gibdos attacking Gerudo Town, you have to fortify it. You have to like put Zora and Gerudo and Gorons and Hylians in position, and Rito flying above with their arrows, serving as archers and fighting off Arrokudas, along with the sages helping you in an epic battle where you have to take down several waves of enemies being sent by Ganondorf in order to destroy Lookout Landing. That would have been an amazing battle that we didn't get in Tears of the Kingdom. But yeah, I really wish we would have had some sort of battle for Lookout Landing, because Lookout Landing is like right in front of Hyrule Castle. And deep below Hyrule Castle is Ganondorf. He knows where the main opposition is. It's literally right in front of him. So all these attempts Ganondorf send out with the fake Phantom Zelda and the Gloom Hands and Phantom Ganons and all his monsters in order to stop Link and the sages. You think that Ganondorf would have one final desperate attempt at stopping Link from going back to Hyrule Castle down into the depths by launching a full-fledged attack with his monsters, and perhaps even a Phantom Ganon leading the charge in order for you to defend Lookout Landing, fortify it, and you have this cool battle between the factions united together, and you ultimately save Lookout Landing from the monsters. opening the door for Link and the sages to head down into the depths for the final confrontation against Ganondorf. Yeah, I know that there's a battle at the gate to his lair between these different waves of bokoblins, Gyptos, lizards, and if you didn't already beat the monsters, the bosses of the 4 regions, well, 5 regions, well, the 5 sages are take on Phantom Ganon, disguised as Phantom Fake Zelda, then all that will happen to make it even more challenging for the players that just want to try and bum rush all the way to the end without going through the main story. It's just something I think would have been cool, like an assault on Lookout Landing. Overall, I really did enjoy playing Tears of the Kingdom's main story. I'm still doing some side questing here and there. I probably will never 100% it because I'm not exactly a completionist. But there is a wish list I have of some stuff I would like to see improvement-wise, which most likely will never happen, and post-game DLC. I would like for the DLC to take place after the main story of Tears of the Kingdom, where you actually have to beat the main story, and perhaps you can't use any of those abilities you gain with Raru's Hand, and so you kind of have to go and do the post-game DLC old school. I mean, at least one of the DLCs, like the main DLC, should be like post Tears of the Kingdom, where maybe there's like shards of Ganondorf that survived his explosion, and you have to destroy his remnant, what's left of him. Maybe like pieces of him like fell into various monsters, which enhance them, and he's trying to use the monsters to like bring them back together in order to reconstitute Ganondorf once again. So Link and Zelda and the sages head off in order to try and stop like this attempt by Ganondorf to reconstitute himself. Now, yeah, it would be a lot more challenging without the abilities that he gains with Raru's Hand, but it would still be a lot of fun because it would make the gameplay a little bit different, where you would have to rely on allies. And maybe you couldn't take like all the sages with you like you can in, well, at least their avatars. Maybe you have to pick one to go as your companion, or maybe you can switch between them depending on the situation. And maybe Pure finds a way to get the old Sheikah abilities to start working again, like the remote bombs. Oh yeah, I want to talk about the remote bombs in a minute. And some of the abilities you had with the Sheikah Slate back in Breath of the Wild getting repurposed for the Pure Pad post Tears of the Kingdom. Obviously, some new drips, new weapons, maybe some additional content from previous Zelda games. There's quite a few weapons and drip from several Zelda games in the past, but more the merrier. Various game improvements, increase the number of units for Link's house. I would also like some additional customization for Link's house, like the ability to change the exterior color from green to other colors like red, blue, yellow, etc. Functionality of Link's house. There's a couple things I would like to improve regarding Link's house. Like, for example, the garden pool. It's just a pool. It'd be amazing if you could actually put fish in the garden pool, and you could harvest the fish, and then they would populate the pool. So you'd always have like a fish supply at your house. And when it comes to the flower bed, this is something that really disappointed me whenever I purchased the flower beds, is that it's just cosmetic. But what if the flower bed allowed you to plant plants into the flower bed, like, I don't know, fire bombs? That way you could have an almost endless supply of fire bombs to go and harvest from your flower bed, and like dazzle fruit or whatever other like plants or fruits you'd like to have in your flower beds at your house. But there definitely needs to be more units for Link's house. I don't know if that's a limitation of the Switch. Speaking of Link's house and other places that happen to be, I guess, safe places like below Lookout Landing, I would like for you to have the ability to have a chest for Link, like a storage chest. Now, this is something I've been wanting since Breath of the Wild, because Link ends up with a lot of stuff. A lot of materials from monsters he's slain, a lot of food, a lot of other items as well, additional weapons, shields, bows. And I know that you have the ability to get weapons racks in Link's house. Another reason why I want more units, so I can store a maximum amount of swords and bows and shields in his house. But it would be awesome if we had a storage chest at his house that, even if you had to buy it, I'd be more than willing to buy it, that would allow you to dump as much stuff in it as possible in order to lighten his inventory, because I got so much stuff in Link's inventory, and this was a problem I had in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, that I really would like to lighten the load and just dump all this stuff in his chest. And if I need it, go back to the chest and grab extra swords, extra pikes, extra shields, extra bows, extra apples, extra monster parts, etc. Why Nintendo never added a storage chest for Link to purchase and use in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is beyond me. It's one of those mysteries that I don't know if will ever be solved. But I would love for there to be a storage chest in Tears of the Kingdom, just like I thought that there should have been a storage chest for Link's house in Latino Village in Breath of the Wild. I would also like an ability to actually just repair the weapons and bows and shields that we have. I realize you can go to the one Octorok and throw a weapon at the Octorok and maybe it'll fix it for you. But just like a blacksmith ability, the ability to go to a blacksmith table, purchase it for your house. That would be an extra unit you could buy and fix particular weapons that you don't want broke, like certain shields, bows, weapons like the Royal Guard swords. Perhaps even clean them up and get that crap off of them and make them pristine. I just wish we had our own blacksmith table in Tears of the Kingdom, similar to, I guess, Skyrim. It just gets annoying, like, always having, like, stuff break on you. If we had the ability to repair and upgrade weapons and shields and bows, that would be amazing. Creating outfits to switch between. So often we have this issue, and this is another reason why I want the storage chest, is like drip that I've collected that I don't use. I just want to put it in the storage chest, but there's obviously clothing items that you want to have, like the champion's leathers, along with a good pair of trousers, the hood. I'll get to the hood in a minute. But I would very much like the ability to, quote-unquote, save outfits and allow Link to quickly toggle from this outfit to that outfit. Say you go into like a hotter climate and you want to switch quickly to an outfit that can best suit Link in a hot environment, or in a cold environment, or when it's storming, or when you're going into the water so you can go up waterfalls. It would be a time saver if we had the ability to select, certain pieces of clothing and save them as a unique outfit for Link to toggle between. At least 6 to 10 outfit slots would be cool, Nintendo. Now, regarding the Hylian hood, yeah, I know there's a side quest. You do the mayor race with CC, and once you beat it, you can have CC like take your hood and put it up or down. I think this is stupid. I think most people feel the same way. And to combat this, what a lot of us do is we go buy another hood and we fully upgrade that hood. So we always have one hood up, one hood down. I think this is unnecessary. It's busy work. And the simple solution, Nintendo, would have been just to give us the option in the menu when we're selecting the Hylian hood, up or down. Up or down. How hard is that? Why can't we have that as an option? And for a lot of the other items in the game as well, like the ability to put things up or down, like certain masks, for example, or helmets. Now, regarding horses, I wish that you had the ability to simply whistle and your horse would come to you from anywhere as long as you had a horse out. Because if you go to the stables and you have them recall your horse, well, they're able to do so easy peasy. Even if your horse is all the way on the other side of the map, they're able to do it and get your horse back. So why can't Link call his horse just as easily, just like in, for example, Red Dead Redemption, Red Dead Online? We have that ability just to whistle, and most of the time our horse would just magically come to us. It is a video game after all. Now, the other issue regarding the stable is I want to be able to retrieve my horse faster, because a lot of times you go to get your horse out of the stable and the stable guy just talks to you in words and words and more words, and you're sitting there going like, button, 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 button. I just want my damn horse. Okay, can I just have my horse? All right, I don't care what you have to say, buddy. I just came here for my horse. Can I have my horse? I don't want to sit here for like a few minutes like pushing through dialogue that I've read at least a half a dozen times already. And finally, one change I really wish they would have made is kept the remote bomb ability instead of the Hero's Path mode. I think Hero's Path mode was in Breath of the Wild. I could be wrong about that. It's an additional upgrade you get via the Pure Pad along with the sensor and the camera. But I do not care for the Hero's Path mode. I don't know if anyone actually does. I feel like it's kind of useless. I much rather have remote bombs because I loved using remote bombs in Breath of the Wild. Yeah, I know you can pick up bomb plants and throw bomb plants and also fuse bomb plants with arrows. I'm fully aware of that. And you can also collect Poes and give them to the bargaining gods for bombs. But if there's one ability I would like back from Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom, it would be the remote bombs. But in conclusion, I really did enjoy playing Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Are there some things I wish they would have done a little differently? Obviously. I wish more people remembered Link, and I wish it actually felt more connected to Breath of the Wild because, for example, a lot of people refer to Calamity Ganon as simply the Calamity, which is fine, I suppose. And I guess you can make the theoretical argument that the Calamity and Ganondorf are connected, and that, say, 100 years prior is when, like, Raru's imprisoning of Ganondorf started to weaken, which is how the Calamity happened. And for the record, I thought they did a great job with Ganondorf. I just wish we would have had more, like, cutscenes in the past, like maybe at least one or two more with Ganondorf's war with King Rauru. Prior to him pretending to swear fealty to King Rauru, I realized like the Tears of the Dragons cutscenes are from Zelda's perspective for the most part because there are times when it does go to Ganondorf's perspective. So I would very much like for there to have been at least two more cutscenes where Ganondorf, prior to becoming the Demon King, expresses why he wants to rule Hyrule, why he's at war with King Rauru and Queen Sonia. And a lot of people like bring up the Ganondorf from Wind Waker, where he actually had some sort of legitimate reasoning for what he was doing because Gerudo is in the desert. And they could have simply copy-pasted that reasoning over to this Ganondorf, that, you know, is the chief of the Gerudo. He's the only male. Every 100 years, Gerudo have a male, mostly women. Maybe Ganondorf starts off wanting what's best for his people, and he realizes that the rest of Hyrule have it much better than Gerudo, and that's the reason why he goes to war, because it feels like Gerudo gets screwed over because they're in the middle of the desert. Meanwhile, you have lush green lands and fields and running water and resources in the rest of Hyrule that Gerudo lacks. So it'd be cool if there was a cutscene where Ganondorf actually started off with good intentions, but you know what they say about good intentions. They ultimately lead to you becoming the Demon King. So that's pretty much my thoughts regarding the main story of Tears of the Kingdom, along with a little bit of Breath of the Wild. I feel like they complement each other pretty good for the most part, except for some questionable things between the two games, especially regarding what Link has been up to between the events of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. The only logical answer I have is that he was by Zelda's side between the two games. It's the only thing that really makes sense, because where else would Link go? Detroit? So, what is your honest opinion about the stories of Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild? What'd you like about it? What do you think Nintendo could have done a little bit better? What improvements would you have liked to have seen included with Tears of the Kingdom, some additions? And what would you like to see when it comes to the hypothetical DLC for Tears of the Kingdom? Your thoughts, views, and opinions, as always, welcome below in the comments section.